All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm Dr. Sarang Suresh. Last time, we did the hard work of carving the perfect canvas with our tooth preparation. Today, we get to fill it. We're officially moving from prep to restoration, and we're going to turn that precise cavity into a structure that's truly built to last. So, take a good look at this. This is what we're aiming for. This is our end game. Remember, we are not just filling a hole in a tooth. We are recreating natural, functional anatomy. Keep this image in your mind's eye because every single step we're about to cover is meticulously designed to achieve this exact result. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll break this whole procedure down into 5 clear stages, from the initial setup right through to patient aftercare. Think of it as our roadmap for success today. Ready? Let's dive right in. All right, section 1, preparation. It's just like building a house. If your foundation isn't perfect, the whole structure is compromised. So before a single speck of amalgam goes in, we have to prepare the field correctly. This stage is all about setting ourselves up for a successful outcome. Okay, our first 2 moves here, they are absolutely crucial. First, we apply a desensitizer. This protects the pulp, and it's key to minimizing any post-op sensitivity for our patient. Second, we place the matrix band and the wedge. This creates a strong temporary wall. It's the container we need to properly build and shape our final restoration. And now for the main event, inserting the amalgam. Now, this isn't just about packing material into a space, not at all. We are carefully, methodically building this restoration layer by layer, using controlled pressure. This is where your technical skill and your precision are really put to the test. Now listen up, because for your exams, these 3 points, they are non-negotiable. 1, you need perfect adaptation to the walls to prevent any microleakage. 2, you have to produce a dense, void-free mass for maximum strength. And 3, you want the lowest possible final mercury content for longevity and corrosion resistance. You nailed these 3 and you've achieved a successful condensation. And here's where we start. We begin with a very small increment, just enough to cover that gingival floor by about 1 millimeter. The key here, and this is super important, is the direction of your force. You need to apply firm pressure not just down, but also laterally, pressing that amalgam against both the matrix band and the cavity walls. This first layer is truly the foundation of the entire restoration. We just keep this process going, adding and condensing small increments one after another until the preparation is slightly overfilled. Now, why on earth would we overpack? It feels a bit wrong, doesn't it? But it's crucial. This ensures that the very top layer, which is often a little richer in mercury, is what we end up carving away. What's left behind at the margin is stronger, denser, and way more durable. This is a critical clinical pearl. The consistency of your amalgam mix is everything. If it's too wet and soupy, or if it starts to get dry and crumbly, it means the setting reaction has gone too far. Don't be tempted to try and make it work. It won't. You have to discard it and mix a fresh batch. It's a small decision that has a huge impact on the final quality. Okay, we've packed the material. Now it's time to become a sculptor. This is where the procedure really transitions from engineering to artistry. Carving is how we take that rough, overpacked mass of metal and turn it back into the functional, beautiful anatomy of a real tooth. So let's get into the technique. So the very first step in carving, well, it actually happens before you even pick up a carver. It's called pre-carve burnishing. Immediately after you finish condensing, while that matrix band is still on, you take a large burnisher and use firm, sweeping strokes. This starts the shaping process and, importantly, gives you one final bit of condensation right at the margins. Having the right tools is half the battle. These are your essentials for carving. The discoid cleoid carver is your workhorse for the major grooves and foci. The Explorer and the Hollenbach carver are your fine detail tools, perfect for refining those marginal ridges and embrasures. And the key word for all of them, and I cannot stress this enough, is sharp. You want to cut the amalgam, not just mush it around. Now, this is a make or break step, so please pay close attention. Using the very tip of an Explorer, you're going to carefully define the marginal ridge. And what's your guide? It's right there, the adjacent tooth. The goal is to make your new ridge the exact same height and contour. Getting this right is critical for a proper contact point and for preventing food from getting trapped later on. All right, once the occlusal anatomy is established and looking good, we shift our focus from the top of the tooth to the sides, the proximal surfaces. Refining these contours is what's going to ensure long-term gingival health and a perfect contact with the neighboring tooth. After you carefully remove that matrix band, you can finally see the proximal surface. And it's really common to find a little bit of excess amalgam at the gingival margin, what we call an overhang. This has to go. Using a sharp amalgam knife, you trim this completely flush with the tooth surface. Leaving an overhang is a major clinical error that will absolutely lead to plaque retention and gingivitis. Think of this diagram as your cheat sheet for proximal contours. Figure A, that's what you're aiming for every time. A smooth, continuous curve that's easy for the patient to clean. Now look at figures B and C. These are the classic mistakes we see all the time. B is too flat, that creates an open contact. C is way too bulky, creating a plaque-trapping ledge. Both of them will lead to periodontal issues down the road. Aim for A, every time. We are on the home stretch now. Before the patient leaves, there are a couple of final, crucial checks. First, get that rubber dam off and check the bite with articulating paper. Adjust any high spots immediately. Then, test the contact point with floss. You're looking for a clean, satisfying snap as it passes through. If the floss shreds or gets stuck, your contact is either too tight or has a rough edge that needs smoothing. And that brings us to the finish line, our final section on finishing, polishing, and aftercare. The restoration is carved and looks great, but we're not quite done yet. These final touches are what guarantee the longevity of your hard work and ensure the patient knows exactly how to care for it. Now here's an important point, and it's a bit of a shift from old school thinking. With older types of amalgam, a separate polishing appointment was standard practice. But with modern high copper amalgams, a really thorough post-carve burnishing often produces a surface that's more than smooth enough. So polishing is now generally considered optional unless you need to correct a minor marginal issue you spot at a follow-up visit. If there is just one number I want you to burn into your brain from this entire session, it's this one: 24 hours. If you do decide that polishing is necessary, you absolutely, positively must wait a full 24 hours before you even think about doing it. So why 24 hours? What's the big deal? Well, it all comes down to materials science. For that first day, the amalgam is still undergoing its final crystallization process. It hasn't reached its maximum compressive strength yet. If you try to polish it too soon, you don't actually polish it. You fracture it. You can easily chip the margins and ruin all of your careful work. So this timing is absolutely critical. Finally, and this is just as important as any technical step, you must communicate clearly with your patient. Give them 2 simple, clear instructions. First, no chewing on that tooth for 24 hours. Second, if you do plan a follow-up for polishing, explain to them why there's a waiting period so the filling can gain its full strength. Clear instructions lead to better outcomes. So that's the procedure, from start to finish. But I want to leave you with this question. It's one thing to memorize a list of steps. It's much harder and infinitely more important to truly visualize the functional anatomy and the occlusal forces you are recreating. So as you practice, don't just think about the how. Constantly ask yourself why. Why is this groove here? Why does this ridge need this specific contour? That deep understanding is what will elevate your work from just being good enough to being truly excellent. Thank you for your attention.